As a filmmaker and cinematographer, one thing I do a lot is make custom Pelican cases. Now, you don't always buy them with everything pre-cut because you don't know what you're going to put in there. So that's why many of these cases come with pick and pluck foam. That is these little squares you see that you can pull out. I've made several cases before for various cameras and accessories. It can be a little bit confusing or strange at the start, but I want to just walk you through my process of what I've been doing for the last 5 years now. Making these cases, it's actually not that bad. It just takes a lot of effort and time, but it's really not too bad. I want to show you my process of what I do when making a brand new Pelican case. So let's get started. So for this, we will need 3 main things. One is obviously our case. You do need to make sure that it is pick and pluck foam. You'll notice that with those squares right there. You're also going to want toothpicks. So I've got these right here. These are great for mapping out your object, which is what we're going to need to do a lot of. And we'll also need a knife. You don't really need one, but it's easier to get down in there, especially if you have a thick case like I do. And it's also nice for something that maybe you don't want to go all the way to the bottom, like this battery here. We can cut the foam and do that sort of thing. It's going to be best to work with the foam outside of the case. So, we'll take this, we'll pull the foam out of here, and then we'll start mapping out where we want everything to go. Now that we've got the foam out of the case, we will start placing our objects where we want them to go. When doing this, keep in mind you want to leave at least one square in between the 2 objects that you're doing. You may want to leave more if it's like a really cheap case with bad foam. So just start planning stuff out where you want everything to go. And then once we get the general idea, we'll take everything off again, so remember where you put it. And then we'll start doing the biggest object first, which is going to be the camera. So we laid everything out. We have an idea of where we want everything to go. So everything's now gone. We're going to working on the camera. The camera is the hardest part to do because there's different pieces that extrude out the back, like the eye piece right here actually sticks out the back. So if I want to place the back of the camera right here along the edge, which is the edge right there of the foam, this piece is not going to fit. So you're going to want to kind of have an idea of all the pieces that stick out. So we're going to need to move it up a row and then have this piece right here only covering this little section, and we'll have an extra padding right there. So something to keep in mind. But now that we've got our camera exactly where we want it to be right here, we will go ahead, take our toothpicks, and we will start mapping out where the camera will go. I like to do the corners of where the foam is going to be pulled out, wherever I will make a turn. So basically, I start in this back corner, I go here, and then I go in right there, and then I will come all the way down to the corner right there. We'll turn this around. And then if you just need to see something, you just kind of pull it with your finger a little bit to figure out where the foam ends. And sometimes you have to make a decision if you want it to be a little bit big or a little bit small. I typically like it a little bit big, so I may just do it right there, and we'll come all the way in here, and then you're basically just doing the same thing all the way around, mapping out the shape of your object. So once our object is mapped out, we will carefully remove it, and hopefully you should see a general shape of your object. So this is my camera, and now we're going to want to start pulling foam out of the middle section, working our way out, because especially this little tight section right here, you're going to want to make sure you don't take out a portion that you want to keep. So there's really no great way to do this except just to get in there and start ripping. If it is somewhat tight, you can use a razor blade like this one and just start cutting it a little bit. You can start cutting these seals right here, the piece that's attaching everything, just to get a little bit of a hole going. So then you can get your fingers in and start ripping out those pieces of foam. Now that we have this initial piece out right here like that, the easy part begins. This was the hardest part, is the initial piece all the time. So now we can just slowly start peeling away at the other portions that we need. And again, we can use the knife if we need to get it started. Just be careful that you don't go too hard or rough on the corners, because those are the edges that you want to be careful with. You already predefined your spacing, so you need to make sure that you don't take out any portions that you didn't want to. So now there we go, we've got this all cut out. One question people ask me all the time is, how big do I need to pull out my chunks in? Like, do I need to pull out like this or like that? And it really doesn't matter. It depends what you want to do with your scraps. If I want to make a base, it's like if I don't want the camera going all the way to the bottom, pull it out in bigger chunks so you can, get the cut that's going to be about the right size to fill the bottom. It's easier in smaller pieces, but it just depends on what you want to do with the scraps, really. Another suggestion I have is get a good case. This is a very cheap off-brand case, and as you can see, the foam is pretty bad. It doesn't pull out that easily. So Pelican is an amazing brand. I also like HPRC. They do some pretty good cases. I find that this no-name brand and Nanook tend to not be that great, so keep that in mind. But now that that's done, we'll go ahead and test our fit. And other than these little things hanging up there, it looks perfect. So there we go. We got this one done. So we can pull this out, and then we will go ahead and do our next piece. Now we get a better idea of placement. This is a very cheap case, so I want to leave 2 squares between everything. So I'm thinking about right there. And then again, we can take our toothpicks and just start marking out the shape of it. And then we start picking the foam, and then repeat for every other item you got. So there we go. After a good half hour of picking and plucking this foam, we finally got everything all cut out, and it's all good. Now, again, a couple of suggestions, especially when cheap cases like this, you want to make sure you leave more than 1 space in between. You want to leave 2. I did a 1 single space right here, and as you can see, it's a little bit flimsy. Now, what about when you have a case like this that cuts out the entire depth, and you have something like this that is thinner than the actual case itself? So take a look right here. You can see we have all of this extra space right here. So what do we do then? Well, you're going to want to take out the piece that you got before that came out of this, which is why you do want to try and get it in as big of a piece as possible. As you can see, I got the entire piece right there. And then what we want to do is just measure out how thick we want this to be. So then I couldn't cut right about here, about halfway. And then all you do is just start kind of cutting like this. Just keep cutting, and then eventually you'll go through it, and then you'll take this bottom piece and you'll put that in the bottom right there. Especially with a nice sharp razor blade, it's actually not that bad. It's pretty quick. So you just kind of push it right down in there. It might actually be better to flip this over and push it in that way. And then now you can see it's pretty smooth on the bottom. Doesn't really matter how the bottom looks. And then I can drop this in right here, and then it won't sink to the bottom. Then we can go ahead and do the same thing for these 2 right here. I got these 2 pieces for battery and polarizing filter. So they'll just go right in there. We can cut those out, and then everything will be completely done. So then there we go. Finally, after all of this hard work, our case is now fully put together. All the holes are perfectly cut out because we did some good measuring, and nothing falls to the bottom now because we filled those holes. But there you go. I hope this video helped you out. It took me a while to find the best method, so if this helped you out at all, feel free to leave this video a like. And if you're interested in more videos like this, hit the subscribe button, and I'll see you in the next one.